Um, Welcome to today's screencast. Today I'm going to show you how to use sensors and location services in Android. So we're going to start with creating two additional activities. One for using location services, and the other one for using sensors. So now I'm gonna create those two empty activities. First will be a sensor activity. We'll call it sensor activity, and the second one, hope I've created that. We'll see later. And the second one will be called a location activity. Oops. Yeah. So those two are our new activities, and in the main activity we're gonna implement moving to those two. So to make it a little easier, we're gonna use a linear layout here with Android orientation vertical, and we're gonna have let's say two buttons. Oops, not tab items, buttons. And those buttons will be, first one will be okay, that's fine. First one will move us to location, and the second one will move us to yeah, I'm gonna change it later. And the second one will move us to sensors. And to do that, of course, we need an on-click handler. We're going to implement a function go to sensors. And here we're going to implement a function Android on-click go to location. And this, of course, has to be not much parent, but wrap content. And both have to be like that. They can be page white, that's not a problem. Not a problem. Okay. So now we need to implement those two. So let's go. Public void go to location view v. Start activity, new intent, get application context, and here main activity class. No, not main activity. Location opens location activity. Right. So that's the first part. Sensor activity, yeah, something like that. Now, to access location, we need to modify our manifest a little. So we need to tell Android that we're gonna use this find permission here. So we need that, because otherwise Android will say, no, I'm not gonna give it to you. You don't deserve this permission, sorry. And now we're gonna do something like that. We're gonna disable those buttons if disable location activity location button if location is not available, and check if we have sensors that we need to go there. And we could do that in onCreate, but the thing is that okay, I'm gonna show you what can happen. Okay, so what can happen is you can go out of the application and revoke the permissions. So, and later on you won't have them. So that's not good, right? So we need to use a different lifetime method, lifecycle. method, and this is on resume. And of course, as always, we need to start with calling the parent. And what we want to do here is we want to check if we have the right permissions and the right hardware. So first we're gonna check that for locations. So we're gonna say location manager here, and this is get a location manager, get system service, and that's called location service, quite reasonably. So first of all, if it is even enabled, yeah. So you can see we cannot do that. Oh yeah, we use older API. So I'm not gonna check that. I'm gonna just check if the provider is enabled, and I'm gonna use the GPS provider because yeah, there are others. So there are also, for example, providers based from networks from Wi-Fi or nearby cells, and that can be used for a rough estimation of location. It's not as precise as GPS, of course, but it's good. Sometimes it's good enough. We're gonna use GPS though. So boolean enabled. So here we check if it's enabled, but there's one more thing that we should do, and we should check if we can actually use GPS. But we can do that in another activity. So we can just say if enabled, well, not enable, or actually it doesn't matter. We just say button B, find view by ID R. Oh yeah, we didn't assign any IDs to these buttons, so let's do that now. Android ID location button, and another one will be sensors button. And what's wrong with that? Oh yeah, it's just to be public, and I've made it. No, it is public. It's fine. Go to location unless it's not fine. Public void go to location. What's wrong with that? Oh yeah, it's the wrong activity. Oh, my bad. My bad. Sure. So this should have been here. And here it's not location activity, but it's main activity, of course. And now we're here. Fine. It's much better now. And here we say location button, RID location button. And we're gonna say B set enabled. So if location is disabled, we're just not gonna do it, and we're gonna change it each time because it's slightly easier than checking if it's already existing. And since we check it anyway, I mean, there's no benefit of adding ifs here. All right, so okay, I might have done it a little too fast. So here's our activity, and you can see that yeah, we don't have this here. We're gonna go somewhere else, but if it's enabled right now. So now let's try disabling it. No, that's notifications, that's not here. It's here, I guess. And oops, not here. Storage, battery, location. Yeah, this thing. and we're going to disable the location altogether. And right now you can see that the button is unavailable. So location is not available at all. We cannot use that. Okay, so since we've disabled locations, let's focus on the sensors right now. We're gonna use two types of sensors. So to modify those and to analyze them, you can go to details and virtual sensors. So here you can see what kinds of sensors are there. So this UI part is responsible for accelerometer, and it's pretty important. So we're gonna use that. And there are also additional sensors like proximity sensor or temperature sensor or magnetic field, light, and all those other things. So we're gonna use one of those two. Maybe light, because light is fairly simple to show. Let's start with the light, because the light is the simpler one. So first we need to get to this activity, of course, and we are already here. So in this activity we're gonna create some text that would tell us the current level of the measurement, the current measurement of the sensor. And we're gonna call this thing an Android ID. We're gonna call it ID sensor value. And we're also gonna have a sensor count, because we may have more than one sensor of a type. We cannot simulate that, but I want to show you how to do it. Alright, so we have those sensors. And now here we're gonna do that in on resume 2. You may say fine, but come on, I mean the sensors won't be added, right? So it's basically the same thing. So hardware can change and it can fail, or it can be disabled. So there are a few things that can happen with hardware, and we really don't care about them. So we don't want them to happen. And there's one more thing, which is the battery life. Because to obtain sensor values, we need to subscribe for them. And if we subscribe for something, we basically create an entry in the system that it has to route the messages to us, and this requires some battery. I mean, it requires some operations, so we use up this battery. Context switching and generally uses some system resources. So it's better to release them if we don't need them. Of course, if we do need them, then it's our use case, right? But if we're implementing a game or something like that that can live without resources, it's better to release them, because it's not a very expensive operation. Right, so we start with getting the service, and in this case this is a sensor manager. And this is a sensor service, of course. So we're gonna cast it. And then, well, then we're gonna get the right sensors. And to get the sensors, we need to get a list of sensors of a given type. And the type in our case is sensor type. So I said we're gonna start with light, so let's start with light. And now we're gonna have a list of sensors. And if this list is empty for some reason, I mean, the reason the list is empty is of course that there are no sensors, or we cannot use them. Then we're gonna say sensor count is equal to 0. Our sensor count is a text view. Sensor count, or you know what, let's just say text view find element view by ID r ID sensor count, and on that thing let's set text 0, and on sensor value we're gonna say not applicable, and otherwise it means that there are sensors. And then in the sensor count we're gonna set sensors size, oh yeah, integer to string, and there's a different way of doing that. Oh yeah, the locale setting. Let's not care about locale right now. So now the value. The value is a little more tricky because, we could say, okay, there is some value, but the value will change. So we need, as I said a few minutes ago, we need to subscribe for the change. Now, to do that, we could subscribe to any sensor. I mean, if we had more than one, then we could subscribe to all of them. I'm gonna show you how to subscribe to one, because to subscribe to more, you just need to do that a few more times, maybe in a loop or something. So you need to register a listener for a sensor. In our case, this listener will be this, and that's a little bit of a problem because we don't implement the right interface, but we're gonna do it in a second. And next thing is the sensor that we want to subscribe to, which is in our case sensors get 0. And then we add some sampling periods and acceptable latency in microseconds, so it's pretty yeah, so we can say every one. Let's see if that's those are microseconds or seconds. Okay, those are microseconds. These are a delay between 2 consecutive events, which means that we want roughly this delay. I mean, that's the period between 2 notifications. So if there is anything that happens more often, then we're not very interested in that. So let's say every 100 milliseconds. That will be enough for us. And the other argument is report latency. So let's say a millisecond delay is acceptable for us. And now the problem is that the listener is not really the thing that we need here, because we need a sensor event listener. So let's implement that. Sensor event listener, and let's implement the methods. Okay, so here we're gonna say this. Sensor value, and we're gonna set value to that's a float, by the way. We're gonna set the value to string format f value f accuracy d. That's because yeah, so here's the thing. Accuracy is basically how accurate is the result. So if we know with a high level of confidence that that's the right value. And then there is this values list array, and I'm using element 0, and that might require a little bit of clarification. So those values are explained in pretty much detailed in a quite detailed way here, and sensor event. And this thing that is this comment or documentation comment javadoc here explains which item means what in which for which for which sensor type. So for example, for accelerometer we get 3 values: acceleration on the x-axis, on the y-axis, and on the z-axis. On orientation sensor we get azimuth, pitch, and roll. On temperature sensor we get temperature in degrees Celsius, which is pretty important, especially if you want Fahrenheit. For accelerometer you get angular speed and estimated drift and things like that. And for light, I said it's pretty easy because we only have one value, and this is light level in lux. Okay, so that's nearly it. We need one more thing, and this thing is so I said we need to subscribe it on resume, and usually if we subscribe to something on resume, then in on pause we should unsubscribe from it. I mean, that's the complementary lifetime method. So on create and on stop, on resume and on pause are kind of complementary. So if we do something in on resume, we should probably undo it in on pause, and vice versa. So if we would stop something in on pause, we should resume it in on resume. And to do that, we need to unsubscribe, and in our case that's quite easy, so we can do it even like that. Cast it to sensor manager and unregister this, because we unregister from everything. And on accuracy change, we could implement something if the other value would change, but in our case, we won't care about that much. I mean, that can happen, but I cannot simulate that very well. So yeah, unfortunately. Okay, let's go. So sensors, we get the lux value of 0 and accuracy 3. Oh, and one sensor, and I've used yeah, my bad. No, it's oh yeah, it's my bad. I should have used vertical orientation so that it will be slightly more readable, and maybe I'm also gonna use a bigger bigger letters, bigger font. So let's use something like that. 36SP should be fine enough. Okay, so we have our control here. Yeah, much better, right? So we have one sensor with value of 0, which is correct. So once we modify that, as you can see, it changes more or less on line. Okay, and so that's the basic usage of the easiest sensor in our case, the light sensor. I'm gonna add another element here. So we have these sensors here. I'm gonna call this one light sensor, and this one I'm gonna call accelerometer. And I'm gonna call this thing light button, and this thing acceleration button. And I'm gonna do that because here I'm gonna change this intent. I mean, in both cases I will go to sensor activity, but I want to open different sensors, subscribe to different sensors. So I'm gonna say if I no, if v get id equals r id acceleration button, I'm gonna add an extra saying sensor type ACC, and else I'm gonna say sensor type is light. Okay, and now I'm just gonna use that here in on resume. Here I'm gonna say intent I get intent, and here I'm gonna do a tricky thing. If get string extra sensor type equals light, then light, and else I'm gonna say sensor type accelerometer. And I think the sensor type is right, but I'll check again. Yes, light and ACC. So if that's light, I'm gonna take light, and otherwise I'm gonna take accelerometer. That's not the best way of doing that. I mean, you probably should have a some reasonable dispatcher and you know maybe a function that would pick the right list, but in our case that's good enough. But we're gonna need one more thing, which is information which sensors are we actually displaying. So we're gonna add sensor type here, another element, and we're gonna of course fill it with no big problem. And here we're gonna say you know what, we're gonna say the same. Oh, we're gonna set this thing, and we're gonna display that, so I'm gonna make it slightly more readable. So our sensor is here, and we're going to do this regardless of what happens. Okay, now there is one more thing, which is this on sensor changed, because this thing will be different for light and will be different for accelerometer. All the rest of the code will stay the same, and this will differ. So I'm gonna say for light I'm gonna do that. Of course I need the intent, and I need to fetch it. And else, if it's not light, I'm gonna do something different, and I'm gonna say value x, value y, value z. And I'm not gonna care about drifts right now. Event values 1, event values 2. Yeah, event accuracy, and that's it. So let's see. Let's see if that works correctly. Or at least works. So let's see, light sensor should work as earlier. Fine, it does. It doesn't display here, so something is wrong, but let's see what in a second. Then we have accelerometer. We don't have it here, so we only need to change it using the device pose. So let's check that. So as you see, once we rotate, the acceleration changes. And the same happens if we do a move. So we can also move the smartphone. All right, and that's so the only thing that is remaining is lack of this element here. So let's see why is it not visible. So on resume we get string extra sensor type. Oh yeah, because we set it to sensor count and not to sensor type. So that's probably the reason. Yeah, we have light. And here we have accelerometer. Yep. All right. So this is everything regarding the first part of the exercise related to sensors. Now, second part is a little different, and it's related to location. Now, I'm gonna enable location again because, well, we're not gonna work without it. I mean, we need some location. So let's go. Let's see, where is it? Here it is, location. And I hope that the apps are not here. Okay, so location is enabled. No. Please, Google Assistant, go away. Go away. Yep. Right. So location is enabled again, and we can go here. And that's of course the wrong thing, and we don't want these. We will put some texts here, and those texts will be something like latitude, longitude, I think that's how we write it, and then speed. There are some other fields too, but I'm not gonna, and maybe altitude too. Altitude, I think that's how you write it. Right, now we need to fill that, and again we're gonna do that in the on resume. So you know what, I'm gonna just copy those two here. And of course this won't work very well. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take a location manager here, location service. Now once we have location service, we can say we can get provider for GPS provider, and Android says no, you cannot do that because you didn't oh yeah, that's not the error here. The error here is a bit different, which is provider, location provider. Yep. And now, no, that's not what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do is say, okay, is provider, if GPS is disabled, and it can be disabled because you can disable it being in this activity. So if it's not enabled, and else we're gonna subscribe. And subscribe means request location updates from GPS provider with the what's this? With the minimum time between notifications of say 500 milliseconds and 1 meter. And the last argument is yeah, location listener. And location listener in our case is this, because again we want this to listen to location. So we're gonna implement location listener, of course. So those methods. And now what happens is Android says no, 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 I'm not gonna work with you because you said you will request location, but you don't know if you have the right permissions. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna say if, and you actually can read that from this error. Call requires permission which may be rejected by user. Code should explicitly check to see if permission is available with check permission, or explicitly handle a security exception. So we're gonna check for the right permission. We're gonna say check self permission, get application context, right? Yeah, and permission is in our case it is manifest permission access find location. And if this is a package manager permission granted, because it returns an int, because yeah, Java is not very keen on type aliases. Kotlin uses that calls it inline classes. It's pretty fancy. Haskell has it in the form of new types. I think Scala also tries to do it some way. Don't remember what right now. So in this case, or if so, let's go back to the exercise. So if we have the right permissions, we can request location updates, and otherwise, well, we could explicitly ask for permissions, but the user can reject them. Let's see what will happen if that's what we're gonna do. So to do that, we're gonna say activity compat request permissions. This I think it's that's the syntax for that. Manifest permissions access find location. And the third argument is, oh yeah, it's request code. In our case, it can be 0, for example. And this request code is something that is returned to on request permissions result. I think we can override that. Override protected void. I think that's the syntax. Yeah, but it's definitely not the signature. That's the signature. String B and int C. And it shouldn't be protected, it should be public. So let's see what those things actually mean. So the first is the request code, the next thing is permission, and the third one is grant results. Okay, so code, permission, and result. Right, so right now we know that we only ask for this one permission, so I'm not gonna check it. So I'm just gonna make a toast here that says string format. No, that does something else. That says if result 0 equals package manager permission granted, then I'm gonna make toast permission granted, and else I'm gonna make it and of course get application context, permission granted, and toast length short and show. Permission granted, get application context, permission denied, toast short show. Unregister listener this. Yeah, so here we want to unregister from the location list. It's not sensor service, it's a location service right now. And we want a location manager, and we want to remove updates from this. ID on pause. Okay, so we requested permissions on each on resume. If we didn't get permissions, then we requested them. So let's see what will be the result of that. Let's go to location. Whoops, something's wrong. Unable to resume activity. Oh yeah, sure. We got a null pointer exception because of this sensor count thing. Actually this one. Because we don't have those sensors here, and here we have latitude, longitude, and altitude, and speed. So we're gonna set those here. Latitude, longitude, speed, and altitude. So we're gonna set all those to not applicable, and yeah, I don't think we have any more toasts here. So let's go to location. So we don't have the right permissions, so we deny them. We got this permission denied, but we got resume, and then we ask for the permission again. So we can say deny. We can say deny and don't ask again, which means permanently deny. And I'm gonna have to remove that now, because so Android can handle that itself, but it's not usually the best. I mean, it's good enough because well, no other the applications that misbehave won't cause much trouble for you. But right now we need to find a place where this thing is, and we say okay, let's see all permissions, no permissions denied. So yeah, let's allow that. Whoops. Yeah, so I've kind of disabled it permanently. So what can I do with that? Let's see. For apps have access to location. Right. See all sensors. Right, I'm gonna uninstall that. And install it again and see what happens. Yeah, so it can ask again. So I'm gonna go here and say, right, if it's denied, then there's nothing I can do, right, anymore. So I'm gonna put a boolean here. Denied once. That is initially false. And here, if denied, I'm gonna say denied once, true. And here I'm gonna say if not denied once, then request permission. And else, if it is already denied, I'm gonna say no access here. if I deny, I'm gonna get no access everywhere. And if I allow, then nothing happens because, well, we did subscribe, but we don't handle those things yet. So it's the time to handle location, and that's fairly simple here. So we're just gonna use this location object. So get latitude, location get longitude, location get speed, and location get altitude, not accuracy, altitude. And of course those are doubles and not strings, so we need to convert them to string with something like that. And just so that it's more consistent than the speed is afloat. Float can be converted to double, so it's not that bad. So if we go to location, we see some location. We can go to maybe this thing and change our location. So let's say, where are we right now? We're somewhere in San Francisco, I guess. So maybe we can move to Las Vegas, because Las Vegas is awesome, I guess, right? To Bel Air city. So let's, oh yeah, we've taken routes, so we need to take a point here right now. Okay, so let's remove that. Okay, let's set our point that is already saved, because something's wrong with my map, unfortunately. Okay, so let's go to route again, and we're somewhere in Kenya. Now let's say we want to move from Garbatula to Garbatula from let's say Madogashi. Why not? And let's save this route, and let's play it. So we've started here, and you can see this little dot moving. So the altitude doesn't change much, unfortunately. Seems that either we don't have recordings here of the altitude, or it's quite flat here. And speed also doesn't change because it's, well, the same road. But once the road changes, then the speed changes as well. And as you can see, that both latitude and longitude are modified somehow and are adjusted to what happens here. Whether it's right or wrong, it's a separate question. Okay, say we want to stop it. So one last thing is here. So provider enabled and provider disabled is another callback we get here. So once a provider gets, well, yeah, enabled and disabled, those should be called. So let's see if that works. So we are in our location, and we're driving our route in Kenya. So it's driving somewhere, but at some point we say, okay, let's disable the location because I don't want, let's say I don't want this location to be visible anymore. So let's disable it. Yeah, and we got this not applicable right now. And that's because we needed to switch the context. So if we enable it again and then go to this thing, we get values again. So if the provider is removed somewhere in the background for some reason, let me see if I can do it here. Not really, unfortunately. Right, anyway, then in those cases, these two callbacks are called. So, yeah, so when provider is enabled by the user and provider is disabled. And yeah, immediately if request location is called for disabled provider. And the provider can be also Wi-Fi or things like that, so that's also one of the reasons we can do that. Right, so that's it for today. Let's do a short recap. So we created a main activity that would verify if a provider is enabled for the location, and disable button moving us to the location monitoring if it's not enabled. Then we implemented sensor activity that can support two sensor types using mostly the same code. It's quite important to use on resume and on pause here to subscribe and unsubscribe, and also to react on all the changes. To get real-time updates, more or less real-time. It's not technically real-time. It's more like online update. We need to register for the events, and then on sensor change it is called, and we can do basically anything here. And then after we finished our work in the sensors, we did a location activity, and in this location activity we also worked mostly in on resume and on pause. So again, basically the same pattern with subscription and unsubscription. One thing worth noting here is this request permissions part. So some features of Android require specific permissions, and we need to, before using those features, we need to check if we actually have those permissions, because if we don't, then well, we'll get a crash, basically, a security exception. So we could handle a security exception instead, or check the permission. And if we don't have the right permission, we can request those using this method activity compat request permissions. Quite a comprehensive list of permissions can be found here in the manifest class. I'm not even gonna read them. So, but if when you need something, you can see them here. Some are deprecated, some are used, and some are quite common. Alright, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I wish you a great day.